Robert Van DerStichele. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm happy today to welcome you for a short interview where we will try to explore together a bit what IDMP can bring to general practitioners or for general for clinicians in general. So first of all, maybe some words about yourself. You are Bob, a certified clinical pharmacologist, but also a pharmaco-epidemiological researchers. And actually, you know what being a GP is because you are a retired family physician living in Ghent in Belgium. And actually, you have a wide area of interest, of course, linked to the use and information on medicines. And you currently works as an expert in many European projects, mainly for the European Institute for Innovation Through Health Data, also called IHD, and in the spin-off RAMIT of the Department of Medical Informatics of the University of Ghent. But today you're there because you are the work package leader of UNICOM on identification of medicinal products, working on applications of the new ISO IDMP standards to clinical practice and medical clinical research. So that's a very important work package. And this, Bob, today you will try to bring some light on exactly what UNICOM can bring to the clinicians and the end users. So before we get into some kind of details, maybe Bob, can you tell us a bit more about UNICOM overall objective and who is in there, who is represented in this consortium? Are end users present in this consortium, one way or another?
UNICOM is a big European consortium comprising more than 40 partners, 11 national drug agencies, e-health institutions, standard development organizations such as SNOMED, HL7, and IHA, and also software companies representing vendors for electronic health records. This complex consortium has the aim to make sure that medicines from any country, medicinal products, brand names from any country in Europe are recognized in any member state of Europe and also in the countries of the rest of the world. So that's the main aim of UNICOM, and therefore, indeed, in Work Package 8, it's a very complex and technical project, but one work package looks at the practical applications, the applications for clinical care, for clinical research, for pharmacovigilance, and we have the privilege to lead that work package.
Okay, so if I understand you well, so it's quite a huge consortium with many stakeholders represented.
Yeah.
And some are clinicians, although the clinicians really in practice are not directly represented, but we take them into consideration, right?
Yeah, that's right. But of course, why do we all do all this? For the end user and for the clinicians. And I think it's best to describe that when a patient, you know that patients in Europe travel.
Yes.
They travel a lot. They go from
maybe not so much nowadays, but usually they do. Yes.
Let's hope that they pick up traveling again. That's what Europeans really like, to go abroad in other countries for holiday, for work. And Europe is a very integrated region. They travel, and when they travel, they carry along with their suitcases. They carry their diseases and their medicines.
Well,
when they arrive in the other country, they can have maybe they have to refill their medicines, or they can have an accident, or they can have a new illness that suddenly comes up, and then they need new medicines, and they need to talk with the pharmacists and the physicians in that strange other country, often in another language, and these doctors have to be able to recognize their diseases, their they have to understand also the medications, and especially when they are writing their own medications from their country, they must make sure that these medications will not cause problems with the medications from the other country that the patient already takes. And to make that happen, to ensure that safety, that security, um, that's precisely what the UNICOM project and the IDMP standard, the global identification of medicinal products, is all about.
Okay, so indeed, we understand that that's not only an issue for the pharma industry and the authorities in charge of market authorization. They need to do some job, I guess. We'll come back to that, but can you maybe try to reflect a bit more on the different use cases of UNICOM? You just explained one, but is this the only one, or are there others which might be of interest for clinicians?
The one I explained is the one that is important for clinical care, I think. The other big use case is pharmacovigilance. Mm-hmm. You know that all agencies collect adverse events from medications, reports of adverse events of patients in their country. This is all bundled and then collated on a international level by Europe, by the FDA in the US, but also by WHO for the world. And to be sure that we know when adverse events are reported, to be sure that from which medicine precisely originated this adverse event, that's the first use case for the UNICOM project, to make sure that this can happen smoothly. The second use case is cross-border prescriptions, movement of prescriptions. If my doctor gives me a prescription in Belgium and I want to go to Austria and I want to fill that prescription in Austria in a pharmacy, that should be possible. I know pharmacists already have systems to recognize a little bit the drugs from all over Europe, but that is then they have to consult databases, etc. What we really want is that this translation, that migration of a prescription from one country to another is built into the systems, and that the systems know and can do the translation from the prescription in country A to country B.
Yeah, but in order for this to work, I mean, it's a never-ending story. I mean, there are new medicines.
It's an ever-changing story. It's an ever-changing story, not a never-ending story.
Ever-changing, not never-changing, but ever-changing, changing indeed.
Yeah. Never-ending, but ever-changing. Story, and I think if the IDMP standard is applied correctly throughout the agencies, that this can be done. And I think the national authorization agencies play an important role here, because they are at the beginning of the flow of information. When a pharmaceutical company introduces a new medicine, they have to authorize that medicine, they have to describe it accurately, update their databases, and from there the information will trickle down to e-health systems, to the electronic health records, to the drug dictionaries. And so it's very important that from the beginning it is done correctly, and that's the responsibility of pharma and the national authorities to get the homework done correctly from the beginning.
And so can you maybe just explain us how concretely a general practitioner could use IDMP, for example, to support decision in his usual practice? What does he need to have? What does he need to do?
What needs to? I think we should explain what the general practitioner needs is functionality.
Okay.
He doesn't have to know about IDMP, as long as when it's correctly implemented in all the systems, it would permit the smooth operations. And what he is interested in, if there is a patient from another country coming in with a medication list from brand names that he can hardly read and doesn't recognize, that it is easy for him to get the information that is needed to understand what the patient's diseases are and what his medications are. And secondly, the GP, prescribing is not an easy task. It's very complex. You have to make a constant balance between using preventive medicines, using healing medicines, and using medicines that just alleviate the symptoms.
Yeah.
And with patients that grow older, and as they grow older, their liver function degrades, their renal function degrades, and just simply by the fact that they go older, suddenly a drug that has been taken for years can suddenly be overdosed. So they have to be constantly thinking about how the different drugs that the patient names, and if with new diseases coming up, new drugs accumulate. Are there interactions? Are these drugs not fighting with each other? Are they still appropriate? This is all very complex. They can rely on experts, but there are not so many experts, and they cannot help everybody. But what they can do, these experts, is extract the knowledge that they have, their expert knowledge, and put it into databases, put it into rule-based systems for decision support, and bring that to the GPs. And if that can then be applied in electronic records and informatics systems that are really good, that are interoperable with medical data that are in order.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you, because I'm sure you've been using yourself as a GP. I mean, softwares which in order to support you in your clinical practice, and I've myself seen quite a few of them, and actually I've seen already decision support.
There are already
it's
systems.
Not working today, and I would have a second question. What should be done then if you believe that it's not sufficient or it's not working sufficiently according to...
Of course, there are already systems in operation, but many of them are experimental. Up till now, the evidence that they really work and work for benefit is quite meager, because these early systems were not very sophisticated, not very pragmatic, too many alerts or too little alerts. They missed the point, or they constantly flashed alerts, and the physicians got tired from it. If you really want a pragmatic, well-operating system that really helps the physician and the pharmacist, that's really a big task. It needs a lot of expertise. It's not just one key player that will make this happen. You need a whole orchestra of key players, with informaticians, with clinical experts, with medical informaticians, and also behavior scientists, because it's a mixture of technique, of expertise, and human machine interface. All that needs to be well orchestrated. And you need so much expertise that this can only be realized at the international level. And we have different centers in the different countries who have reached international experience on one topic. We can put all that together, but then it needs to travel. These rules and these expertise knowledge databases they also need to cross the border.
Okay.
And cross the language barriers.
That's an important message, actually. So if I hear you, is to say, well, it's just not a question of, I mean, in order for this to happen, people need to collaborate. And for that, IDMP needs to be a reality, and then the orchestra can begin to play and actually bring the value for each individual state system. That's what you tell us, right?
That's what I'm telling you, yes. And,
that's
and there's good hope. I think it's not a never-ending story. I think there's good hope that this major project, this huge investment from Europe, will lead to implement these ideas in the coming 4 years. Maybe just not just for Europe, but I think to the profit of, I think, also the rest of the world.
Yes, and I'm thinking just listening to you. Of course, we see the drugs itself already harmonizing the drugs is already quite a complex issue. Huh? We know
Sure.
it
Yes.
within the
Yeah.
UNICOM project, and I mean we are now working on a product pilot list in order just to try to really identify the core issue and with very much having in mind operationalization of those
Yes.
standards. But beyond that, you just mentioned it, that's a whole bunch of knowledge which could also then be created, like, for
Yes.
example, the drug-drug interaction or a
Yeah.
better links between drugs and diagnosis and this kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
It's the other side of the coin. You, it, IDMP can help the clinical practice, but it can also help the research. There's a lot of talk about real-world data. Uh, the collection of an enormous amount of clinical data in large databases that will deepen our knowledge and give us a very much more insight in what is really happening in diseases and the way drugs interact with diseases. These are all tremendous promises, but for them to come true, these essential steps, namely the implementation of global identification of medicinal products,
Mhm.
is an absolute must. And we hope to contribute
Uh,
with
can,
UNICOM.
can you just, well, not in a nutshell, because that's not the key focus of this interview, but just to make it clear, which are the specific aspects of the drugs for which we
Well,
need urgently practical solutions and that we are working upon in Unicom?
there are three elements, if you want to describe a drug, that are essential. What is the active ingredient, the substance in the drug? What is the essence of the medicine? Um, in what dose form is it formulated? Is it a tablet, a capsule? Is it a gel?
Mhm.
Is it an injection? And what is its strength? It seems very odd that these three simple characteristics.
Yeah, I mean, you just
That
understand it straight away. I'm not a
yeah,
doctor.
well,
So
but
what's
as an
so
example,
complex about it?
I would like to give you um, the authorization of the UK, the EU, and the US of the COVID vaccine of Pfizer.
Mhm.
Um, these three elements were described in a different way by the three authorization centers. If you check
Mhm.
the user leaflet, you will see that these three elements are slightly different in the three countries. So pharma and the different um, medicine agencies in the different jurisdictions are in need of this standardization and need to
Mhm.
to to get themselves acquainted with what is needed to really implement this global identification of medicines.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. So maybe a final question to end with. Well, there are many things to be done. We understood that. And although we can see what can appear at the end of the road, hopefully not too far away from now, but what is today the main things which needs to move ahead and which has maybe been left idle to now? What is the momentum now?
For me, the harmonization and the mapping of the drug databases of the national authorization agencies, especially with regard to these three key elements, substance, dose form, and strength, are the key issues that at least we should achieve in the coming 3 years left in UNICOM.
And do you believe that, well, in countries where they have already a system in place which is working and fitting with most of the use
Yes,
cases, they
there
will,
are there
how
are
can
but
you convince them to adapt, to make the necessary adaptations? Although apparently they say, well, we have everything we need in stock.
I
I
think
mean, your arguments are convincing, but will this be sufficient for decision
my
makers?
answer would be the um, the, the example of power that this generates, so to show the things that you can do with this, and also the power of the example. Right? So if we can show in best practices that in some agencies and in some countries they were able to implement all this at the agency, at the e-health, at the medicinal product dictionary, and at the clinical systems from the physicians and pharmacists, then I think a few examples like that are enough to convince the others, I think.
Thank you very much, Bob. Very insightful. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, and good luck.
Thank you.
Within your endeavors within UNICOM. I'm sure we'll get very nice results out of this.
We'll do our best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.